Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stood in the main control room of Genesis Station. The massive orbital platform hummed with energy around him, its 12 atmospheric processors working day and night to prepare the dead world below for human life. For 15 years he had designed terraforming equipment for the Terran Colonial Authority, but this was his masterpiece. Genesis Station was the largest atmospheric processing facility ever built, capable of transforming an entire planet in just 2 years instead of the usual 20. The dead world of Kepler 442c spun slowly beneath them, its brown surface already showing patches of green where the processors had begun their work. In 3 days, the final activation sequence would begin, and the planet would start producing breathable air. 3 million colonists waited in cryogenic sleep aboard transport ships, ready to wake up in their new home. Jake had spent 5 years of his life making this moment possible. "Jake, we're getting some strange readings from the outer sensors," called Amy Rodriguez from her station. She was the chief technician, a small woman with quick hands and an even quicker mind. Jake had worked with her on 4 previous terraforming projects, and she had never let him down. Jake walked over to her console and frowned at the display. 12 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, their energy signatures unlike anything in the human database. The ships were sleek and organic-looking, more like living creatures than machines. They moved with purpose toward Genesis Station, their formation perfect and threatening. "Those aren't human ships," said Ben Carter, the systems analyst. He was young and nervous, fresh out of the academy, but he had a gift for reading sensor data. "The energy patterns are completely different from anything we've seen before." Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. In all his years of terraforming work, he had never encountered alien life. Humanity had been alone in the galaxy for as long as anyone could remember, expanding slowly from system to system without meeting another intelligent species. But these ships were clearly artificial, clearly controlled by someone or something with technology far beyond human capabilities. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. "At current speed, about 6 hours." Ben replied, his fingers dancing over his controls. "Should I send a message to Colonial Authority?" "Yes, immediately," Jake said. "Priority 1 transmission. Tell them we have first contact with unknown alien vessels." As Ben worked on the transmission, more ships began appearing on the sensors. Within an hour, 37 vessels had taken positions around Genesis Station, forming a perfect sphere that trapped the human facility in the center. The ships were of different sizes, from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts, but they all shared the same organic design and moved with the same eerie coordination. Jake had seen enough battles during his military service to recognize a blockade when he saw one. These aliens, whoever they were, had not come to talk. They had come to make demands. The communication came exactly 6 hours after the first ships had appeared. The main screen in the control room flickered to life, showing a creature that looked somewhat like a tall, thin human, but with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and black, and when it spoke, its voice was cold and mechanical. "I am Admiral Vexstar of the Hegemony Fleet," the creature said. "You will identify yourselves and state your purpose in this system." Jake stepped forward, his heart pounding. "This is Jake Morrison, Chief Engineer of Genesis Station. We are terraforming this world for human colonization under the authority of the Terran Colonial Government." "The Terran Colonial Government has no authority in hegemony space," Vexstar replied. "This system has been under our protection for 3,000 years. Your presence here is illegal." "We had no knowledge of any other intelligent life in this sector," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "If this is your territory, we can discuss." "There is nothing to discuss," Vexstar interrupted. "The hegemony has maintained order in this galaxy for millennia. We have watched your species expand from system to system like a plague, consuming resources and destroying the natural balance. Your expansion ends here." Jake felt his anger rising. He had spent 5 years of his life building Genesis Station, 5 years away from his family, 5 years of 18-hour days and endless problems. 3 million people were counting on him to give them a new home. We're not destroying anything. We're creating life where there was none before. You are creating chaos, Vexstar said. The hegemony maintains strict population controls and resource management. Your species breeds without limit and consumes without thought. This cannot be allowed to continue. And what exactly are you planning to do about it? Jake asked. Vexstar's expression did not change. You have 72 hours to abandon this system completely. Remove your station, your ships, and all traces of your presence. If you comply, you will be allowed to return to your previous territory and will not be harmed. If you refuse, we will destroy everything you have built here. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew looked shocked and frightened. Amy was the first to speak. Jake, we need to contact the Colonial Authority immediately. They need to know what's happening here. I'm already on it, Ben said, his fingers flying over his console. But the nearest military base is 6 days away at maximum speed. Even if they sent every ship they have, it would take a week to get here. Jake walked to the observation deck and looked out at the alien fleet. The ships hung in space like predators, their organic curves somehow more threatening than the angular warships humans built. He could see weapon ports along their hulls, energy signatures that suggested firepower far beyond anything in the human arsenal. Sir, I'm getting a response from Colonial Command, Ben called out. They're ordering immediate evacuation. All military vessels are being recalled from the outer systems to form a defensive line around Earth. Jake's hands clenched into fists. They're abandoning us. It's the smart play, Amy said quietly. Genesis Station is just one facility. Earth has 40 billion people. And what about the 3 million colonists? Jake demanded. What about the 5 years we've spent building this place? What about the fact that we're 3 days away from completing the greatest terraforming project in human history? Jake, be reasonable, Amy said. We can't fight an entire alien fleet with a terraforming station. We have 12 people and no weapons. Jake looked back at the alien ships, his mind racing. Amy was right, of course. Genesis Station was not a warship. It was a scientific facility designed to create life, not destroy it. But as he stared at the sleek alien vessels, an idea began to form in his mind. A crazy, impossible idea that might just work. Maybe we don't need weapons, he said quietly. Jake Morrison stood in the empty corridors of Genesis Station, his footsteps echoing off the metal walls. Most of the crew had left on the evacuation ships 12 hours ago, following direct orders from Colonial Command. Only 12 people remained on the massive station, and Jake had given each of them multiple chances to leave. They had all chosen to stay. Amy Rodriguez found him in Engineering Section 7, staring at the massive atmospheric processor control panel. The 12 processors were the heart of Genesis Station, each one capable of breaking down planetary atmospheres at the molecular level and rebuilding them into something humans could breathe. They were the most advanced pieces of terraforming equipment ever built, and Jake knew every circuit and every power coupling in their design. The last evacuation ship leaves in 6 hours, Amy said quietly. Jake, you need to make a decision. Are we really going to stay here and die? Jake turned to face her, his eyes bright with an idea that had been growing in his mind since the aliens first appeared. Amy, what do you know about hegemony technology? Nothing, because we just learned. They existed yesterday, she replied. Jake, you're scaring me. What are you thinking? I've been studying the sensor readings from their ships, Jake said, walking to a computer terminal. Look at these energy signatures. Their power systems are incredibly efficient, but they're also incredibly precise. They use quantum cascade reactors, which means they maintain very specific energy frequencies to keep their power stable. Amy frowned as she looked at the data. Okay, so what does that have to do with us? Everything, Jake said, his voice growing excited. These atmospheric processors work by generating focused energy beams that break molecular bonds. They use harmonic frequencies to shatter the connections between atoms and rebuild them in new configurations. It's the same principle that makes glass shatter when you hit the right musical note. You want to use the processors against their ships? Amy asked, beginning to understand. Jake, these things are designed to work on planets, not spaceships. The range is all wrong, the power requirements are massive, and we don't even know. If their shields won't matter, Jake interrupted. I'm not talking about hitting their hulls. I'm talking about hitting their power systems directly. If we can generate the right frequency, we can disrupt their quantum cascade reactors from the inside. It would be like giving their entire fleet a heart attack. Amy stared at him for a long moment. You want to turn Genesis Station into a weapon? I want to turn Genesis Station into a tuning fork, Jake corrected. A very large, very powerful tuning fork that can sing the exact note that will make their ships stop working. Ben Carter appeared in the doorway, his young face pale with exhaustion. Jake, I've been monitoring their communications. They're not just planning to destroy the station. They're planning to sterilize the entire system. Every human facility, every piece of equipment, even the terraforming work we've already done on the planet. They want to erase all evidence that we were ever here. Jake felt his anger flare hotter. 5 years of his life had gone into this project. 5 years of solving impossible problems, of working 18-hour days, of being away from his family so that 3 million people could have a new home. And now these aliens wanted to destroy it all because it didn't fit their idea of order. How long do we have? Jake asked. 54 hours, Ben replied. After that, they start shooting. Jake walked back to the atmospheric processor controls. The 12 massive devices were arranged in a perfect circle around the station, each one pointing down at the planet below. But with the right modifications, he could redirect their energy beams outward toward the alien fleet. The problem was synchronization. To generate a harmonic frequency powerful enough to disrupt quantum cascade reactors, all 12 processors would need to fire at exactly the same time, creating a standing wave pattern that would propagate through space. Amy, I need you to help me recalibrate the targeting systems, Jake said. We need to redirect the processors from planetary bombardment to fleet engagement. Jake, even if this works, the power requirements will overload our reactor, Amy protested. We'll have maybe 10 minutes of operation before the entire station melts down. Then we better make those 10 minutes count, Jake replied. Over the next 24 hours, Jake and his small crew worked frantically to transform Genesis Station from a peaceful scientific facility into something that had never existed before. They rerouted power systems, recalibrated targeting computers, and synchronized the 12 atmospheric processors to work as a single massive weapon. The work was dangerous and exhausting, but Jake drove them forward with a determination that bordered on obsession. Lisa Park, the station's communications officer, managed to intercept some of the hegemony's internal transmissions. Jake, they're not taking us seriously, she reported. Admiral Vextar is telling his fleet commanders that humans are a primitive species with no real military capability. He thinks we're just going to sit here and wait to die. Good, Jake said, making final adjustments to the harmonic frequency generators. Let them think that. The longer they underestimate us, the better our chances. Tom Walsh, the station's chief mechanic, looked up from the power coupling he was installing. Jake, I've been thinking about what happens after we fire this thing. Even if we destroy their entire fleet, we're still going to die when the station's reactor goes critical. Is it worth it? Jake paused in his work and looked around at his crew. They were all young, all brilliant, all with their whole lives ahead of them. He had no right to ask them to die for his project. But when he looked at their faces, he saw the same determination that drove him. They understood what was at stake. 3 million colonists are counting on us, Jake said quietly. If we don't stop the hegemony here, they'll keep pushing humanity back until we're trapped in our own solar system. This isn't just about Genesis Station. This is about proving that humans don't give up when someone tells us we can't do something. Amy nodded slowly. Besides, someone needs to show these aliens that engineers can be just as dangerous as soldiers. With 18 hours left before the hegemony's deadline, Jake made the final connection that would allow all 12 atmospheric processors to fire simultaneously. The station's reactor was already straining under the increased power load and warning. Lights flickered throughout the facility, but the weapon was ready. Amy, run a final diagnostic on all processors, Jake ordered. Then, monitor the hegemony fleet for any changes in their formation. Everyone else, get to your stations. We're going to show Admiral Vexstar what happens when you threaten a human engineer's life's work. Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the human station through the main view screen. The primitive facility continued its work as if nothing had changed, its atmospheric processors still firing down. At the planet below, the humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and Vexstar suspected it was the latter. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the terraforming station," reported his tactical officer. "The power output has increased significantly over the past 12 hours. Vexstar's forearms gestured dismissively. "They are probably trying to complete their work before we destroy them." A futile gesture, but typical of their species. "How much time remains?" 16 hours until the deadline, sir." "And still no sign." "Of human military vessels?" "None, sir. Our long-range sensors show that all human warships have retreated to their inner systems. They have abandoned this station completely." Vexstar felt a mixture of satisfaction and disappointment. He had hoped the humans would provide more of a challenge, but they had proven to be as weak as all the other species the hegemony had encountered. In 3,000 years of maintaining galactic order, no species had ever successfully resisted their demands. The humans would be no different on Genesis Station. Jake Morrison made final adjustments to the harmonic frequency generators. The 12 atmospheric processors were now synchronized to fire as a single unit, their combined energy focused into a beam that could penetrate subspace itself. The calculations had taken him 14 hours of continuous work, but he was confident. The frequency was correct. "Jake, the reactor temperature is climbing faster than expected," Amy called from her station. "We're going to have maybe 8 minutes of operation before a complete meltdown." "That's all we need," Jake replied, checking the targeting computer one more time. The hegemony fleet maintained a perfect spherical formation around Genesis Station, with Admiral Vexstar's flagship positioned directly ahead of the station's main axis. It was the perfect target. Ben Carter looked up from his sensor display. "Jake, I'm picking up increased activity in their fleet. They're powering up weapon systems." "How long until they're ready to fire?" "Maybe 30 minutes. "They're being very methodical about it." Jake nodded. The aliens were confident, taking their time because they believed the humans posed no threat. That confidence would be their downfall. "Lisa, open a channel to the hegemony flagship," Jake ordered. The communications officer's fingers danced over her controls. "Channel open, sir." Admiral Vexstar's image appeared on the main screen, his large black eyes showing mild curiosity. "I am surprised you wish to speak, human. Are you ready to surrender?" "This is Jake Morrison, Chief Engineer of Genesis Station," Jake said, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his chest. "I have a message for you and your fleet. Speak quickly. Your time grows short." Jake stepped closer to the screen, his eyes locked on the alien admiral. "You made a mistake when you threatened my life's work. You made a bigger mistake when you threatened 3 million innocent colonists. But your biggest mistake was thinking that humans need weapons and warships to defend themselves." Vexstar's expression remained unchanged. "Your species' arrogance continues to amaze me. You have 1 terraforming station against 37 warships. What do you possibly think you can accomplish?" "I'm going to show you what human engineering can do when we get angry," Jake replied. "Amy, are all processors online?" "All 12 synchronized and ready," Amy confirmed from her station. "Jake, the reactor temperature is approaching critical levels. We need to fire now or we'll lose the chance." Jake looked back at Admiral Vexstar, who was watching the exchange with what might have been amusement. "You have 30 seconds to order your fleet to withdraw from this system. If you don't, I'll demonstrate why humans don't need traditional weapons to win a war." 1 terraforming station against an entire fleet? Vexstar laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. Your species' capacity for self-delusion is remarkable. We have quantum cascade reactors that can power entire worlds. We have shields that can deflect anything your primitive technology can produce. What exactly do you think you can do to us? Jake's hand moved to the firing control. I'm going to teach you about harmonic resonance. The countdown timer on Jake's console reached 0. Every system on Genesis Station screamed warnings as the reactor pushed beyond its safety limits. The 12 atmospheric processors, designed to reshape entire planets, turned their combined fury toward the hegemony fleet. The beam that erupted from Genesis Station was unlike anything ever seen in galactic warfare. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was pure scientific principle turned deadly. The harmonic frequency, calculated to match the quantum cascade reactor's resonance pattern, spread through subspace at the speed of light. The energy wave passed through the hegemony ship's shields as if they weren't there. Targeting the very heart of their power systems, Admiral Vexstar had exactly 3 seconds to realize what was happening before his flagship's reactor containment began to fail. The quantum cascade that powered the Eternal Dominion started to fluctuate wildly, its carefully maintained frequency disrupted by the harmonic interference. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as the reactor moved toward critical overload. Emergency. Shut down, Vexstar shouted, but it was too late. The harmonic wave had already destabilized the quantum cascade beyond any hope of control. The reactor's containment field collapsed, and the Eternal Dominion disappeared in a ball of blue-white fire. Across the fleet, the same scene played out again and again. The sleek organic ships that had seemed so powerful and threatening moments before became funeral pyres as their reactors failed one by one. The harmonic wave spread through the formation like a plague, and within minutes, 36 of the 37 warships were nothing but expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Only one ship survived the initial assault, a heavily modified cruiser whose experimental shielding had provided some protection against the harmonic interference. But even that vessel was crippled, its reactor damaged and its weapon systems offline. The ship drifted helplessly in space, its crew struggling to restore basic life support on Genesis Station. Jake watched the destruction through failing monitors as the station's reactor entered its final moments. The harmonic pulse had drained their entire power grid, and the containment field was collapsing. Emergency systems flickered and died as the temperature climbed beyond any hope of control. "We did it," Ben said, his voice filled with amazement and terror. "We actually destroyed an entire alien fleet." "Not destroyed," Jake corrected, watching the reactor temperature climb toward the point of no return. "We solved the problem. They thought they could intimidate us with superior firepower, but they forgot that engineers don't fight wars the same way soldiers do." Amy looked at her console, where red warning lights flashed like angry eyes. "Jake, we have maybe 2 minutes before the reactor goes critical. Should we try to reach the escape pods?" Jake shook his head. "The pods won't get us far enough away in time. Besides, someone needs to make sure the station's destruction is complete. We can't let the hegemony study our modifications." Tom Walsh laughed bitterly. "So we win the battle and die anyway. Is that really victory?" Jake looked out at the wreckage of the hegemony fleet, scattered across space like broken toys. "Yes, it is. Because now they know that humans can't be pushed around. Now they know that when you threaten our colonies, our families, our future, we'll find a way to fight back. And we'll keep fighting until we win." The explosion of Genesis Station lit up the Kepler system like a small sun. Jake Morrison and his 11 crew members died instantly as the station's reactor finally gave up its fight against the impossible demands placed upon it. The blast was so intense that it could be seen from the planet's surface, a brilliant flash that marked the end of humanity's greatest terraforming project and the beginning of something far more significant. On the bridge of the crippled hegemony cruiser Vigilant, silence. Captain Mortak stared at the expanding cloud of debris that had once been both the human station and his entire fleet. His ship's life support systems flickered weakly, powered by emergency batteries that would last maybe 6 hours. Half his crew was dead, and the other half was working frantically to restore basic functions to their damaged vessel. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony High Command," reported his communications officer, her voice strained with pain from the injuries she had sustained during the attack. "Put it through," Mortax ordered. Dreading what he was about to hear, the holographic image of Supreme Commander Kethvil appeared in the center of the bridge, his ancient features twisted with rage and disbelief. Captain Mortax explained to Esme how a single terraforming station destroyed an entire battle fleet. "Sir, the humans somehow modified their atmospheric processors to generate a harmonic frequency that disrupted our quantum cascade reactors," Mortax replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "The attack came without warning and bypassed all our defensive systems." "Impossible," Kethvil snapped. "Our reactors are the most advanced power systems in the galaxy. No primitive species could understand their principles well enough to—" "Sir, I have the sensor recordings," Mortax interrupted. "The humans didn't attack our ships directly. They attacked the quantum fields that sustain our power systems. It was like they had studied our technology for years and found its one weakness." Kethvil's expression grew thoughtful and deeply troubled. "Send me all the data immediately. And, Captain, you will remain in that system until a rescue fleet arrives? I want you to study every piece of debris from that station. We need to understand how they did this." The transmission ended, leaving Mortax alone with his damaged ship and the growing realization that the Hegemony had just encountered something unprecedented in 3,000 years of galactic conquest. The humans had not simply defeated a superior force. They had done it using principles of science and engineering that the Hegemony had never considered. Meanwhile, in human space, the automated transmission that Jake Morrison had programmed into Genesis Station's computers was spreading across the colonial network. The message was simple but devastating. Complete technical specifications for the harmonic frequency that could destroy Hegemony ships. Within hours, every human engineer in the outer colonies was studying the data, trying to understand how a terraforming station had been transformed into the most effective weapon ever used against alien technology. Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief engineer at the Proxima Centauri research station, was the first to fully grasp the implications of Jake's discovery. She called an emergency meeting with her staff, spreading the technical documents across the conference table like treasure maps. "This changes everything," she said, her voice filled with excitement and fear. "Jake Morrison didn't just destroy a fleet. He showed us how to turn any piece of industrial equipment into a weapon against the Hegemony." Her assistant, Carlos Viga, looked up from the harmonic frequency calculations. "The mining operations on Tau Ceti use the same type of molecular disruptors. If we can modify them to generate this frequency, we can defend our colonies without building a single warship," Sarah finished. "But more than that, we can take the fight to them. Every human facility in the galaxy can become a potential weapon." The word spread quickly through the engineering community. On New Shanghai, the massive orbital shipyards began secretly modifying their construction equipment. On Kepler 186F, the agricultural processors that helped feed the colonies were quietly retrofitted with harmonic generators. On Ross 128b, the communication arrays that connected human space were upgraded with the ability to focus deadly frequencies at any target within their range. The Hegemony, meanwhile, was struggling to understand what had happened at Genesis Station. Captain Mortax had been rescued along with his surviving crew, but the data they brought back painted a terrifying picture. The humans had not simply gotten lucky. They had demonstrated a level of scientific understanding that the Hegemony had never expected from such a young species. "The problem is not just the weapon itself," explained Chief Science Officer Velthrin to the assembled High Command. "The problem is the thinking behind it. Most species, when faced with superior military force, try to build better weapons or stronger shields. The humans looked at our technology and found a way to make it destroy itself." Supreme Commander Kethvil leaned forward in his chair. "Are our other reactor designs vulnerable to similar attacks?" "All quantum cascade systems share the same basic principles," Velthrin replied. If the humans can generate the right frequencies, they can potentially disrupt any of our power systems. We would need to completely redesign our entire technological base to defend against this type of attack. How long would such a redesign take? Centuries, sir, maybe longer. The silence that followed was deafening. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had maintained galactic order through technological superiority. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses impenetrable. But the humans had found a way to turn all of that against them using nothing but scientific principles and engineering skill. Admiral Vextar, who had somehow survived the destruction of his flagship in an escape pod, was brought before the High Command to give his testimony. His 4 arms were bandaged, and his gray skin bore the scars of severe burns, but his black eyes still held the cold intelligence that had made him one of the hegemony's most feared commanders. "A human engineer warned us," he said, his voice hoarse from the injuries he had sustained. "He told us we had 30 seconds to withdraw. I thought he was bluffing. I thought no terraforming station could threaten a battle fleet." "What was your assessment of the human's mental state?" asked Kethville. "He was angry," Vextar replied without hesitation. "Not afraid, not desperate, but genuinely angry. He told us we had made a mistake by threatening his life's work. He said, we had underestimated what human engineering could accomplish when they got angry." "And you believe this was not an isolated incident?" Vextar's expression grew troubled. "Sir, I have studied the humans for months in preparation for this operation. They are not like other species. When most civilizations encounter a superior force, they submit or negotiate. Humans solve problems. They look at impossible situations and find ways to make them possible. What happened at Genesis Station was not luck or desperation, it was human nature." The High Command exchanged worried glances. If Vextar was right, if the humans could turn any piece of equipment into a weapon using scientific principles, then the hegemony faced a threat unlike anything they had encountered in 3 millennia of conquest. "What do you recommend?" Kethville asked. "Complete withdrawal from human space," Vextar replied immediately. "We destroyed their fleet, so they sent an engineer. We threatened their colony, so he destroyed our armada. These humans don't fight wars the way we understand them. They solve problems, and we just became their problem." 3 years after the destruction of Genesis Station, the first colonists finally arrived at Kepler 442c. The planet that Jake Morrison had died to protect was now a green paradise, its atmosphere thick with oxygen and its continents covered in forests and grasslands. The terraforming work that Genesis Station had begun continued automatically, guided by programs that Jake had written before his final battle. Captain Lisa Chun stepped off the transport ship Unity and breathed the fresh air of humanity's newest world. Behind her, 3 million colonists emerged from their cryogenic sleep chambers, blinking in the sunlight of their new home. The journey had taken longer than planned, delayed by the war that had erupted across the galaxy after Jake Morrison's discovery. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Planetary Survey Team," reported her communications officer. "They found something interesting in the northern continent." Lisa nodded and boarded the shuttle that would take her to the planet's surface. The northern continent was where Genesis Station had fallen, and the survey team had spent weeks cataloging the debris field. But what they had found was not just wreckage, it was a message. The monument stood in what would become the capital city of New Genesis, a simple metal plaque surrounded by flowering trees that had grown from seeds scattered by the station's explosion. The words were engraved in basic English, meant to be read by the colonists who would eventually call this world home. "Morrison Station, Engineering Solutions for Impossible Problems," Lisa read aloud. "Jake Morrison, Chief Engineer, Genesis. Station, Amy Rodriguez, Chief Technician. Ben Carter, Systems Analyst." The list continued, naming all 12 crew members who had died to save the colony, but it was the final line that made Lisa's breath catch in her throat. "This is what happens when you make an engineer angry." The words had been programmed into the station's computers by Jake himself, transmitted to the planet's surface in the moments before Genesis Station's destruction. It was his final message to the colonists he had died to protect, a reminder that their new home had been purchased with the sacrifice of 12 people, who refused to give up. Lisa activated her communicator. Colonial Command, this is Captain Chun. New Genesis is ready for full colonization. The terraforming is complete, and the planet is safe for human habitation. Understood, Captain. How are the colonists adjusting to their new home? They're calling it paradise, Lisa replied, looking out at the green hills and blue skies that stretched to the horizon. Jake Morrison would be proud. Meanwhile, in the depths of hegemony space, Supreme Commander Kethvil was dealing with the consequences of Jake Morrison's final act. The harmonic frequency that had destroyed the Genesis Station fleet was now standard equipment on every human facility in the galaxy. Mining operations, communication arrays, shipyards, even agricultural processors had been modified to generate the deadly frequencies that could disable hegemony ships. The humans have turned their entire civilization into a weapon, reported Admiral Kethmar, one of the few commanders who had survived encounters with the modified human equipment. We cannot approach any human system without risking total destruction of our fleets. What about our efforts to develop countermeasures? Kethvil asked. Unsuccessful, sir. Every time we modify our reactor designs, the humans find new ways to exploit them. They share their discoveries instantly across their entire network, so a breakthrough on one world becomes standard knowledge throughout human space within days. Kethvil closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 3,000 years of galactic dominance crumbling around him. The hegemony had ruled through fear and superior technology, but the humans had found a way to turn that technology against itself. Every quantum cascade reactor, every shield generator, every weapon system that the hegemony had developed could now be disrupted by human engineers who understood the universe in ways that the hegemony had never imagined. Sir, we're receiving reports from the outer systems, another officer reported. The humans are not just defending their colonies anymore. They're expanding again, and they're using their harmonic weapons to clear out any hegemony presence in systems they want to colonize. Show me, Kethvil ordered. The holographic display showed the current state of the galaxy, with human territory marked in blue and hegemony space in red. 3 years ago, the blue had been confined to a small cluster of systems near Earth. Now, it had expanded dramatically, pushing deep into what had once been undisputed hegemony territory. The humans are not conquering in the traditional sense, the officer explained. They arrive at a system, disable any hegemony ships present using their harmonic weapons, then establish colonies and begin terraforming operations. They're not interested in destroying our worlds or enslaving our people. They just want us to stay away from their expansion. Kethvil studied the display, noting the pattern of human expansion. They were not attacking randomly or seeking to destroy the hegemony completely. They were simply claiming the space they needed for their growing population and making it clear that any interference would be met with the same fate that had befallen the Genesis Station fleet. What are our casualties? He asked. Minimal, sir. The humans disable our ships but usually allow the crews to escape. They seem more interested in removing obstacles than in killing enemies. It was a strange kind of warfare, Kethvil realized. The humans were not trying to destroy the hegemony, they were simply making it irrelevant. Every time a hegemony fleet encountered human forces, the result was the same: total system failure and humiliating retreat. The humans had found a way to neutralize the hegemony's technological advantage without engaging in the kind of brutal conquest that had characterized galactic warfare for millennia. Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from the human colonies, the communications officer reported. It's addressed to the hegemony high command. Put it through, Kethvil ordered. The holographic image that appeared was not of a military commander or political leader, but of a middle-aged woman in engineering coveralls. Her name appeared on the screen as Dr. Sarah Kim, Chief Engineer, Proxima Centauri Research Station. Greetings, Supreme Commander Kethvil, she said, her voice calm. and professional. I am speaking on behalf of the Human Colonial Engineering Council. We have a proposal for you. Speak, Kethvil replied. The galaxy is large enough for both our species to coexist peacefully, Dr. Kim continued. Humanity has no desire to conquer or destroy the hegemony. We simply want to be left alone to develop our colonies and expand our civilization. In return, we offer to share our scientific discoveries with any species that approaches us in peace. And if we refuse, then we will continue to defend ourselves using the methods that Jake Morrison taught us, Dr. Kim replied. Every human facility in the galaxy is now capable of disabling your ships. Every engineer in our colonies understands the principles of harmonic resonance. We are not warriors, Supreme Commander, but we are very good at solving problems. Kethvil felt a chill run through his body. The humans were not threatening war, they were simply stating facts. They had turned their entire civilization into a defensive system that could neutralize any hegemony attack. The choice was not between war and peace, but between coexistence and irrelevance. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. A new kind of galactic order, Dr. Kim replied. One based on scientific cooperation rather than military dominance. The hegemony can maintain control of its existing territory, but human expansion will continue unimpeded. Any species that wishes to trade knowledge or technology with humanity will be welcome to do so. And if we attempt to interfere with your expansion, then you will discover what Jake Morrison discovered 3 years ago, Dr. Kim said, her voice growing hard. That human engineers can be very dangerous when they get angry. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvil alone with his thoughts and the weight of an impossible decision. The age of hegemony dominance was over, ended not by superior weapons or military strategy, but by the brilliance of one angry human engineer who had refused to accept defeat. 6 months later, the hegemony formally withdrew from all human claimed systems and established new borders that respected humanity's expanding territory. The withdrawal was presented as a strategic repositioning, but everyone in the galaxy understood what had really happened. The humans had won not through conquest, but through engineering, not through destruction, but through innovation. They had proven that the most powerful weapon in the universe was not a gun or a bomb, but a mind that refused to accept the word impossible. And in the archives of New Genesis, Jake Morrison's final transmission played on endless repeat, a reminder to future generations of what one person could accomplish when they got angry enough to change the galaxy. This is what happens when you make an engineer angry.